Set in the wall in front of him was a door. So far as Junpei could see, there was no other way to proceed. It was that door, or nothing. Alright, let's open it. Junpei took a deep breath, readied himself, then grabbed the doorknob and pulled the door open. But it's a push door. How did you pull it open if it's a push door? He paused for a moment, and then stepped through into the room. And there he saw the number that had hung over their heads since they'd woken up. 9. Like the numbers on every other door, this one, too, was a rough shape made of red paint. Oh shit, that was the gun for killing everyone who couldn't get through the 9 door? Fuck. His door was set into the back wall of the room. Junpei leapt towards it with a sudden burst of hopeful energy. It was a large double door, heavy, and full of solemn importance. He grabbed a hold of the door handle and shook. Nothing. But he hadn't expected it to open. The red sat on the wall next to the door. The screen read vacant. Finally, they'd found it. Junpei felt himself overwhelmed by a torrent of emotion. At last, they'd found the exit. But cold gripped his heart, and he knew all too well why. He stood frozen, unsure of what to think or feel. Junpei! Look! Behind you! He spun around. I couldn't believe what he saw. It was a door, with the number 9 written across it. Was there a second door? Why? Junpei's voice was barely audible, even to himself. He stumbled towards the second door as if somehow compelled. It was a small single door. It sat in the starboard corner of the room, on the same wall as the door they'd entered from, but in the opposite corner. 9. There was no mistaking it. A red sat next to this door as well. Junpei shook the door handle pointlessly and muttered to himself. Why? Why the hell are there 2 doors? It was Santa who answered. There are always 2 doors. Just think about it. Zero never said there is only 1 door with a 9 on it. It is hidden, but an exit can be found. Seek a way out. Seek a door that carries a 9. Of course, we just assumed there was only 1. After all, why would there be more than 1? Oh man. Jeez. Junpei was stunned. Zero's trick had taken him completely by surprise. There were 2 more doors. That meant that the 9 people who had met at the central staircase could escape and leave no one behind. Does it? Now the reason for the bracelet numbers being 1 through 9 was clear. Divided in 2, the digital route for both teams would be 9. For instance, 1, 2, 7, 8, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. The digital route for both teams would be 9. Or this other combination. The digital route would also be 9, but people are dead. There are many other workable combinations, but they all ended the same way, with a digital route of 9. What did that mean? The answer was quite simple. From the very beginning, the nonary game was designed to save all 9 people. Zero hadn't been lying. Zero never said there was only 1 door. But anyone who'd found themselves in the game would have assumed that was the case. Fights would have broken out. One team would likely betray or deceive the other. Someone might be hurt. Someone might get killed. But eventually they would reach the room Junpei now found himself in and realise the pointlessness of whatever violence they'd visited upon each other. There were 2 doors. No need to kill each other. They'd understand and be appalled, overwhelmed with guilt at what they'd done. Perhaps that was the purpose of the game. That was how the nonary game was meant to be played. Fortunately, they hadn't started to fight one another, at least not yet. But if one misstep was made, if the wrong mistakes happened, the stakes would rise and the noose would tighten. The thought of it sent a chill down his spine. So, what are we going to do, Junpei? Go back and get the bracelets. Voice broke through Junpei's frantic thoughts. Santa's voice. It brought Junpei back to his senses. When he was worrying about the future, he needed to figure out what they were going to do next. There were 4 people in the room. Ace, Santa, Junpei, and June. Their bracelet numbers were 1, 3, 5, and 6. The digital route would be 6. In other words, 4 of them couldn't open a door with a number 9. But what if there were only 3? Could door 9 be opened with 3 of them? It took him no time at all to determine the answer. There was only one combination of 3 people that would give a digital root of 9. 1, 3, and 5. That would mean... No, we've got to go back. It wasn't quite a possibility he was willing to consider. Santa and Ace agreed. Yep, I agree. We cannot leave June behind. Junpei let out a breath he hadn't realised he'd been holding. Are you sure? I don't mind staying. June's body betrayed her true feelings. Her eyes were wet at the beginnings of tears and her legs shook. It's okay. There's no way we'd leave you behind. Santa had said what Junpei had known the moment he'd realised which 3 people could go through the door. So I wonder if it had been Santa. Would he have left him? Ace probably would have been like, no, I am staying. I am an altruistic bastard. And you will all worship me and write poems to my altruism. Yes. Besides, I'd rather drown at the bottom of the ocean than escape with this sausage fest. Maybe I'll go to Atlanta. Are you sure you don't mean Atlantis? Alright. Perhaps it was the sudden reassurance that no one wanted to leave June behind, but Junpei laughed harder than he had in some time. Santa and Ace smiled. You guys. June blinked tears from her eyes and bit her lip. She didn't seem to know what else to say. Very well. Best we head back to C deck then. We should be able to take the elevator we passed earlier. Perhaps Clover, Seven, and Lotus will have returned from door 1. Even as Ace spoke, they knew finding the others wouldn't improve the situation. There was no way they could split into teams that would both go through the doors. Ace knew it. They all knew it. There was nothing else they could do. We'd find the other 3 and search for another solution. Alright, let's go. Ace looked at all 3 of them, and then turned and headed through the door. Santa and June followed. Junpei started towards the door, then stopped. He'd been too busy with the other concerns to notice the room itself. It didn't seem terribly important now, but what exactly was it? Junpei looked around the room for the first time, noticing that things that weren't doors with 9s on them. A red carpet that ran between 2 columns of wooden benches that ran the length of the room. The carpet began at a large set of double doors and ran towards the bow, toward... Junpei wasn't sure. On it was an altar, perhaps? A small rectangular alcove at the end of the carpet set the alcove was... At the end of the carpet and inside the alcove was a raised platform. Resting on top of the platform was a coffin. A coffin. A coffin. What on earth was a coffin doing in a place like that? Before Junpei had time to answer that question. Hey, Junpei! What the hell are you doing? Let's move! Santa's words echoed from the hall outside. Oh, right, okay. I'll be right there. Junpei turned on his heel and left the quiet, somber room. Snake? They took the elevator up to C deck. Once there, they headed back towards the main hall and the central staircase. It didn't take them long. Junpei found Seven and Lotus waiting for them. They didn't look happy. "We've got a problem. Clover is gone." Junpei and his three companions looked at one another. He turned back to Seven and Lotus. "What do you mean, gone?" Santa, Ace and June had their own questions to ask. "When? Why?" "You two went to door 1 with Clover, didn't you?" Seven and Lotus responded as best they could. "Yeah, we went through the door together. Clover barely spoke to us. And she just did her own thing the whole time. There were 4 rooms on the other side of door 1. She wouldn't let us into the 4th room. She just said, 'I'll take care of this one,' and shut the door. She must have blocked it with something on the other side. We waited for a while, but Clover didn't come out. We called for her, but she didn't answer. So I kicked down the door and went in the room. But it was empty. Clover wasn't there. There was a door on the other wall, and it was open. We figured she opened the door and left by herself. We ran after her, of course, but... well, obviously, we didn't find her. We figured out that much. Clover's gone." Junpei thought for a moment. "When did this happen?" "We got her just before you. You certainly have excellent timing. You haven't searched anywhere other than near the staircase?" "No, we haven't." Finally, Ace spoke. His voice had an edge of resolve and concern. "Very well then, we best separate and look for Clover. We haven't much time left. Let's begin." There were quick nods all round, and the 6 remaining players spread out. Junpei and June ran over the large hospital room together. As quickly as they could, they searched around under the beds and the corners. "She's not here." "No, she isn't." "Alright. Just in case, we should go take a look in the shower room." "The shower room?" "That's where her brother is. She might have gone to see him." June bit her lip. She knew as Junpei did there was only one thing to see in the shower room, and it wasn't pleasant. "We might as well check, right? Let's go." There was a screwdriver stick between the door and the frame. Junpei and June slipped through the door, moved down the hallway, and stepped into the shower room. No luck. "Yeah, I don't think she's here." June's voice was faint. She placed her hands over her mouth. Her face looked a little green. The stench in the room was almost unbearable. It had grown far more unpleasant since the last visit. If Junpei had eaten lunch, he would have had difficulty retaining it. He wanted to leave the room as soon as possible, but he had to be sure. And the only way to be sure was to check the other side of the divider. "Wait here." June offered no resistance and nodded weakly as Junpei headed round the divider. He stopped at the corner and turned his head. Just as he expected, Clover was nowhere to be seen. The only thing on the other side of the divider was a dead body, lying in a reddish-brown puddle of drying blood. There are many ways a man can die, but this... The skull was shattered, the head little more than a probably mass of brain, bone and viscera. Left arm was hideously twisted into a horrific alien shape, and the bright white of an ulna shining through the remains of skin and muscle. Huh? Wait. Oh, now he figures it out, you dipshit! Bright, white, ulna, bones. Pieces fell into place. Junpei remembered something Clover had told him in the lab. "My brother's left arm is, it's not like a normal person's arm. The accident hurt him real bad, and to save him, they had to cut off his arm." Of course. Why hadn't he realised it earlier? Clover had told Junpei that Snake's left arm was a prosthetic. But the left arm of this corpse behind the divider was quite clearly a real human arm. Or, at least, it had been. Once. That meant... the corpse. Junpei and June headed back towards the large hospital room. They stepped through the door and out of the shower room. Down the hallway they went, searching for Clover in every corner. They reached the stairs when 7 appeared, breathless and yelling. Junpei! June! Where are you guys? He looked pale and his face was drawn. Something terrible had happened. Junpei's breath caught in his throat. Did something happen? 7 drew a shaking hand across his face and gulped down a breath of air. Clover is dead. I found her in the first-class bathroom. All sound ceased for Junpei. The world was an empty, muffled expanse. Then he began to hear his own breathing. June's mouth moved, but he heard nothing. She tried once more, then her energy was gone. She collapsed against the wall. He could have helped her, but he hadn't. Now she was dead. So he stood there, frozen in place. Clover. Clover. Why had this happened? He forced his body to move. Each step felt like another nail pounded into his heart. Finally, he was in front of her. He knelt and placed 3 fingers against Clover's neck. No pulse. No breath. But she was still warm and her eyes were closed peacefully. It would have been easy to think she was asleep. Easy, that is, were it not for the slowly expanding puddle of blood beneath her. He traced its source to her back, a gash just beneath her shoulder blade. Was the weapon a knife, perhaps? If it was a knife, the killer had taken it when they left. When he closed his eyes, he saw Clover's smile. Her innocent smile. Her energy. He would never see her smile again. He could have done something. He could have helped her. His stomach twisted itself into a sickening knot. Junpei lifted a limp June from the floor and carried her to the bathroom. From the bathroom, sorry. Are you alright? It was a foolish question, and you knew it. Yes, I think so. Her voice was weak. The fever had gone down, but the emotional scars she received were not likely to recede quickly. Junpei laid a hand on her shoulder, and they walked back to the bedroom. You should get some rest. He lowered June until she was sitting against the bed. She nodded once and stared at the floor. 4 others in the room. Ace, Lotus, Santa and 7. They all stared at nothing, their faces drawn and tired. After a while they drifted into the bathroom to see Clover's corpse themselves. Once everyone was back to the bedroom, Junpei slowly walked to the centre of it and looked around at the slumped figure gathered there. He was the first to find the body. Me. 7 spoke from behind Junpei and he turned around. 7's hand was up. Why'd you come in this room? To look for Clover. What else? I found a body in the bathroom. As soon as I did, I ran outside. I got to the top of the stairs by the casino and yelled as loud as I could. Hey guys, I found her, but it's bad. She's in the bathroom in the first-class cabin. Come quick. Or something like that. Then I went back to the bathroom. Ace, Santa and Lotus showed up real soon after that. But I guess you two hadn't heard me or something, because you didn't show. So I took off down the stairs to look for you. After that, I mean, you know the rest, right? Junpei nodded and closed his eyes. There's one more thing he needed to ask. 7. There's one more thing I'm worried about. What's that? When we finished all the puzzles in this room and got the door open, You stuck one of those plates between the door and the frame, right? Why'd you do that? Come on, didn't I already tell you that already? I did it so the door wouldn't lock. So we could come back to this room. Oh. Oh, you think I did it? I don't know. It kind of depends on what you say, doesn't it? Seven sighed and shook his head. Follow me. There were 2 doors standing next to one another. He'd opened the one on the right. Behind the door was a closet. Seven stepped inside. He stood in front of one of the shelves that filled it and gestured towards a small box. The box was a small metal cube. He looked at Junpei. This is the reason. This safe. We couldn't open it when we were getting through this room. I figured there might be something pretty important in it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Besides, I figured eventually we might be able to figure out what the numbers were for the safe. And if we did, I didn't want to screw around with door 5 again. So I put that plate in the exit door so we could get back in that way. You get it now? Junpei nodded and looked at the safe. He grabbed the handle and shook it. Nothing happened. It was locked as it had been when Seven found it. There's one change, however. Just underneath the safe was a pile of fine reddish-brown powder. Rust. Junpei stared at it for a moment. Had someone opened the safe, dislodging the rust? Junpei left the closet. Seven followed him back to the bedroom. It was cold and quiet. No one spoke. They sat, frozen in place by shock and grief and fatigue. The room felt tiny and oppressive. A thick metallic smell of blood filled the room. Junpei turned and headed for the living room. Anything to get out of there. Was there some other clue, perhaps? Anything that might lead him to discover whoever had stabbed Clover? He took his time and examined the room carefully. His eyes caught on the door. The door that led to the passageway, door number 5. Behind that door was the dead body of the 9th man. Maybe I should have another look at it, just in case. Quietly, he pushed the door open. A smell hit him like a blow to the face. His lungs contracted, unwilling to inhale such fetid air. Acid boiled up from the base of his stomach, churning what little food was there to violent froth. It was too much for him, and he vomited. A thin stream of yellow water and bile spattered to the floor. He wiped his mouth weakly and stared at the dead body. Chunks of torn flesh lay in an arc around the body. What remained of its intestines had slid out onto the floor. The pool of blood that had framed it was half dry, so thick that it had taken on a texture not unlike that of an egg yolk prepared sunny side up. On the floor, next to the broken mass of the man's head, lay his glasses, cracks spidering across the lenses. The bloodstains near them had already dried, like scabs on the floor. It was then he noticed. It's gone. His bracelet. It's gone. It had been there when Junpei had gone through door 5 before. He was sure of it. Right next to the glasses. But now... it was gone. Number 9 bracelet was gone. But why? Had someone taken it? He was turning it over and over in his mind when he heard Seven's voice. Huh? Where'd Junpei go? It had drifted out to him from the living room. Junpei walked slowly out of the hallway. Oh, there you are. Are you looking for something in the hallway? Seven looked up as Junpei entered the room. Did you find something? He thought for a moment before he responded. No. Nothing. Technically, it wasn't a lie. He hadn't found anything in a way. In fact, that had been the problem. Something he'd expected to find hadn't been there. The 9th man's bracelet. What's up? Oh, well... I wanted you to take a look at something. What is it? Seven led Junpei back to the bathroom. As Clover's corpse came into view, he felt his heart flip and then fall to the bottom of his stomach. Something between a sigh and a groan escaped his lips. What was it you wanted to show me? His voice was hollow and empty. I searched Clover's body again. I found this. As he spoke, he moved around Clover's head, then knelt down and flipped open her right hand. What? She was holding a piece of paper. I haven't actually looked at it yet. I didn't want to disturb the crime scene, you know. Basic stuff. I did borrow one thing. He wasn't sure what that meant, but likely it didn't matter. Probably the knife. The paper was more important. He picked it up and carefully opened it. There were 2 sentences written on it. Truth had gone, truth had gone, and truth had gone. Ah, now truth is asleep in the darkness of the sinister hand. What is this? Some kind of secret code? Seven peered over Junpei's shoulder at the note. Junpei stared away from Clover's body and into the living room. He began to pace, beginning to attempt to decode the note. First clue was likely the phrase sinister hand. Sinister hand means left hand. Sinister was a term used in heraldry that meant to the left arm of the bearer of a coat of arms. The left hand. The left hand. What did the left hand mean? Seven's left hand? Junpei looked at his own left arm. The bracelet on his wrist. Did the darkness of the sinister hand have something to do with the bracelet? He examined the bracelet closely. There were 2 protrusions on either side of the face. The left and the right sides of the face. Left and right. Left and right. Right and left. Truth is gone. Truth. Gone. It sounded funny. What did it mean? Truth. Gone. Maybe those 2 words... Without reading out loud, Junpei said the words to himself quietly. Nothing. They sounded exactly what he'd expected they would. Time for a different idea. About switching them. God had truth. It made no more sense than the initial riddle, even less. Clearly, switching the words wasn't going to happen. Hell, time for a different idea. What else could they mean? What else could gone and truth mean? Truth, of course, meant something that was correct. Something that was fact. Something that was right. It would follow that gone meant left. Right is left. After all, if someone left, they would gone. In that case, however, they clearly referred to the directional homonyms. So that means truth is right, gone is left. That seemed to make sense. Junpei looked at the bracelet again. Left is right. There are 2 protrusions on the left and right side of the face. Junpei pressed them in the following order.